All right, in this episode, I'm super excited to introduce my guest today. His name is Evan Burkosky, and he's the CEO of Kimaru AI. He's also a very well-known startup mentor here in the Tokyo area. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Lee. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the invitation. Thanks. You and I see each other at so many events and rarely have a chance to actually sit down and talk. So looking forward to this.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this conversation because we actually had met during the Founders Institute program, and you were one of the startup mentors there. And you told us a
Hmm.
little bit about your journey into becoming a startup founder yourself. So I was wondering if you could share that with us today.
Yeah, well, I guess the short answer to that is that it's kind of in my family. My parents are both entrepreneurs, and so I grew up with my parents being small business owners, and uh, the example of the autonomy and kind of responsibility for running their own business that they showed. For example, when I was a kid, I never got like an allowance. They never gave me money for anything, but they always created opportunities for me to make money. So, hey, Dad, can I buy a new bike? Sure, go chop that firewood. I'll give you $10.
Exactly.
So it was partly with that mentality that I first came to Japan. The family business was commercial fishing, and I had done that in my teenage years and early 20s to pay for school, like every summer during summer vacation. And during the bubble years, we sold almost all of our salmon to Japan. And so I had this idea that I could go to Japan and create like a more direct import route and then like better market Canadian seafood, and that there would be a business opportunity in there somewhere. I went on a working holiday visa and taught English the first year, like everybody does. But that business, it turned out to be really hard to do the import side of it, but the marketing side took off. And so I wound up running a boutique marketing agency that did like digital marketing campaigns, multilingual web development, SEO, SEM, and all everything. So that was really like my pathway into tech, got deeper and deeper into founding several businesses that kind of spun out of that. It was SaaS companies that spun out of things we were doing in the marketing agency, basically productization of things that we were working on there. And eventually, I got into bringing interesting tech to the Japanese market, coming to like Silicon Valley, where I am now, and identifying, tools that would solve some problem in terms of like website optimization or using big data analytics to understand what people were doing with the websites, and then eventually that led into like algorithms to better target ads or better personalized content, and then that kind of machine learning is what powers most like AI prediction and prescriptive analytics and the kind of stuff that we use at Keynote now. So it was kind of this iterative journey, just a lot of enjoying the Japanese experience and trying to solve problems as I went.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, your Japanese experience has been what, almost 20 years now? Is that it?
Oh, I arrived in 2003 and I've stayed continuously. So it's been, 22 years now.
Wow, man, that's amazing. That's really incredible. I just started my Japanese journey, last year, and it's been really great getting into the Tokyo like ecosystem, right? And
Yeah.
like understanding what people are building and meeting people like you and others. So yeah, I guess what have you seen in terms of the differences in terms of the Japanese startup ecosystem in general?
Oh, I mean, there's a huge difference. Like when I first founded the marketing agency, I was the only foreign founder who had incorporated a Kabushiki Aisha that I knew of, personally at all. I'd heard some stories of people doing it, but I didn't know any of them. So it was quite a journey. I had to figure out all of the aspects of it pretty much by myself. With the marketing agency, I had a Japanese co-founder, so he helped navigate a lot of that, but just a lot of questions. It was right at the time that the government was making it easier to incorporate, so they dropped the previous barriers on incorporation for a KK or Kabushiki Gaisha. Uh, so it used to be that you needed, what was it, 10 million was the standard 10 million yen was the standard to incorporate, and then 3 million was sort of an acceptable minimum barrier, but they dropped that to like 1 yen. So in practicality, it was still about 500,000 yen to incorporate, but it got way easier.
Mhm.
So they were making initial steps towards, the concept of like, I wouldn't say startups, because let's use the modern definition of startups as being a high growth vehicle backed by venture funding. Uh, I wouldn't say that that model existed then or was really the government's intention then. But what did exist was the concept of entrepreneurialism. And so the idea that you could start a ramen chain or something like that. I think that's what most of the initial, let's say, government initiatives were around. And today it's totally different. It's totally about building these like high growth, rocket ship, VC backed engines of economic growth that will create jobs that give people intrinsic motivation and better work life balance, and give Japanese startups the ability to go global from day one, like we're trying to do with Kimaru. And that's come about through a lot of like bridge programs, JETRO, working with accelerators like the Alchemist Accelerator that we went through. You went through Antler, I think it was, right?
Yep. Yep. Mhm.
And didn't you do a bridge program too, like Alchemist X or one of those?
No, I didn't. No, no, just
So
Antler.
Antler, and then Founder Institute, like you mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the existence of these type of programs makes it far, far easier now,
Mhm.
uh, and it's much more, let's say, professional and impactful.
Mm. That's great to hear. Japan's always been well known for hardware tech, like that, and like
Yeah,
manufacturing and all those techniques, like the automotive industry, technology, video games, and stuff like that, but not necessarily for
yeah.
software. And I think there's been big
Mm.
goals to create, what is it, 100 unicorns in 5 years or something like that from the Japanese
Hmm.
government. How have you seen the government's involvement in helping facilitate this type of growth?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. I actually just had a meeting today at the local San Francisco JETRO office, and this is one of the things we talked about. And I shared, my early, let's say, hypothesis. I'm still kind of working out the details of this, but my current working hypothesis is that Japan is actually going to get a huge late mover advantage from not having focused too much on digital and retained its hardware first competencies and very, 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 high quality manufacturing standards, because a lot of the digital, you know, revolution that drove the economic advancements in North America and Europe over the past 20 years was around efficiency improvements that came through cloud computing and like CRM and ERP software like that that improves efficiency. And Japan definitely needs that, but I think was hampered by the ability to understand and leverage cloud-based tools as well as language barriers. So the late mover advantage is probably going to come from vertical AI agents, which can now be installed more at the Gemba level or more at the factory floor. So that's one of our goals with Kimaru, for example, is to actually be able to do on-premise closed loop installations that learn and allow people to improve in their supply chain and logistics environment. So my hypothesis, to kind of sum it up concisely, is that agentic AI solves the language problem. It allows the average Japanese worker to be able to communicate with the agent in Japanese and have it understand, like the agents are completely multilingual. They understand commands in any language. And then actually, actualize that in their manufacturing environment. So I think it's actually going to be a huge boom for Japan's manufacturing industry, where its core strengths still lie.
Excellent. Yeah, that's definitely sounds exciting, and hopefully it will help streamline a lot of these processes to get some of these things out, right? So let's talk about
Yeah.
decision intelligence. When I first heard
Hmm.
this term, I was like, what does this mean, right? And I think that a
Yeah.
lot of people might have some questions with regards to decision intelligence. So can you
Sure.
walk us through what that means and how Kimaru is looking to solve the problem with that? Yeah.
Yeah, I heard it phrased yesterday as AI for professionals, which I think is pretty apt. Basically, a lot of the past, let's say 10 or 15 years or so of trying to leverage big data to mine insights in order to make business decisions was based on sort of a consulting practice. It was like, let's gather all of our data, look at all of our historical sales reports, that sort of thing, and try to find interesting patterns that might give us insights. And then maybe that will connect in some way to our desired business outcomes. And in the absence of a better methodology, that was sort of fine as an interim solution. It led to a lot of dashboards and a lot of reporting, a lot of time spent in tools that were hopefully going to lead to some insights. And I would say throughout my career, especially in consulting projects, once in a while I've been able to find a really good insight and actually move the lever on those desired outcomes. But decision intelligence takes that concept and kind of flips the script and says, instead of starting with whatever data we can gather and compiling massive amounts of data, let's start with our desired outcome. So we
Mm,
want to reduce costs. We want to maybe get cash out of inventory that's being locked up in warehouses and there's too much safety stock, and let's make better investments with that cash. Or we want to increase our revenue, or we want to improve our hiring goals, or something like that, some tangible desirable outcome.
mm,
Once you've decided what that outcome is, then you map every action you can take in a causal chain that will affect that desired outcome.
mm,
So first think about all the internal things that you can actually do that will control that outcome.
mm,
And then map all of the external factors that are outside your control that would likely impact it as well.
mm,
Like market fluctuations or weather events or let's say political party changes of administration, these kind of things. Once you have that map, it's called a causal decision map or causal decision diagram. Then you can connect data just at the relevant points to model that out and create a decision digital twin, like a simulation of the decision.
mm,
Then you can leverage AI to do prescriptive analytics, and it will look at your desired outcome, the actions you can take, and recommend which levers to pull.
mm,
So prescriptive analytics, basically, it's an evolution of that analytics framework. It goes from the descriptive analytics, which is backwards looking. This is what we see in the data. These are the patterns that we can find, and so on. And then the next step is predictive analytics, which says, here's all the data, and it looks like we're trending, this way. So we'll probably be here. And prescriptive analytics says, well, it looks like we're trending this way, but we actually want to be over here. And here are the things that you can do. Here are the actions you can take to get there. So it makes prescriptions or recommendations, is what we usually call that.
yeah, I like the analogy with prescriptions, right? Like you're trending the wrong
Yeah.
direction. Here's to get back on track. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of like, going to the doctor and the doctor gives you a prescription, which, maybe you could take as a recommendation. But
Mm,
yeah, that's a good way of thinking of it. We're building like vertical AI agents that make these prescriptive recommendations.
interesting. So it's the goal of this like type of program or this type of system to remove the like emotional decision-making process and look at things at a more objective stance, or what's the goal? Yeah, for that.
Yeah, that's quite a large part of it. It's the identification of biases, and there are multiple biases. It could be personal biases. It could be biases in the data. You have to be aware of even like automation bias, which is an over tendency to trust AI.
Mhm.
So this methodology is designed to sort of highlight or make shine a spotlight on areas where there might be a bias. But the end goal is more to improve the decision making process for accuracy and speed. Essentially, the AI is crunching all of the underlying metrics, all of the data that goes into forming the foundation of the decision, and then the human user is applying their critical thinking, thinking from first principles, quite often creative problem solving
Mhm.
and just their intrinsic intuition, best judgment, experience, from years of making decisions like that to inform the AI and improve the overall decision making process. So it's like human and machine working together to make better decisions.
I see. So it's not we're not replacing humans in this scenario. It's more so making it more informed decisions. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's very specifically, at least Kimaru, what we do is not decision automation, but decision augmentation.
Mm.
So you can think of it as any decision making process as a series of iterative loops. And a lot of those loops can be run by the AI without any real risk. Like let's look at a common data cleaning use case. Dates tend to be written in different formats by different users across different cultures and different languages. And it's the classic data ratification problem. It's really hard to get dates like ratified, correlated across data sets. But agents can easily understand the different date formats and then link those together. So
Mm.
that's a process that can be, a closed loop, just let that run. But then, the date reporting, if that goes up to a decision that can, affect people in an impactful way, if there's some weight to that decision, let's say, then there absolutely should be a circuit breaker in that loop, which is the human user, the human in the loop that checks that process, approves it, and then lets it run.
Mm.
So what we've built with Kimaru, we're a decision intelligence platform for supply chain and logistics. We've built these circuit breaker loops so that the simple processes are automated, but all critical decisions have a human in the loop.
Mm.
And the AI agent runs a lot of the underlying really heavy like data collection, ratification, and so on, and then makes recommendations or stops the process and asks for human input whenever it's an important decision. And so the human user works in a really simple visual UI to go through the task list and basically clear the tasks that they need to do around things like inventory and pricing optimization. So they're basically just saying to the agent, yep, this is good, go ahead and run that process, adjust that price or move that stock over there or reorder that product. Or sometimes, oh no, something tells me that's not right, so let's slightly adjust that price, or we'll reduce the order, or we'll reset the safety stock in this case. And because we have essentially a conversational UI and LLM, the human user gives the justification to the agent, and the agent learns from that. So from that process on, they've now learned, just like onboarding a new coworker.
Mhm.
You have to teach them the processes and you tell them just the justification for why you're making those decisions, and the agent learns over time. So yeah, the human learns from the AI's non-biased recommendations, which should be based on critical thinking, and then the agent learns from the human's experience and creative problem solving.
Well, then also hopefully the human itself will, learn from this type of decision making and make better decisions as they use your platform as well. So that's
Yeah.
really exciting stuff. So right now you're focusing on the supply chain industry. Do you see this being applicable in other types of industries as well?
Oh yeah, the type of software category that we are, DIP, or DIP, or Decision Intelligence Platform, has applications to all decision making, whether business or governmental, political, a lot of defense use cases. So Gartner will be launching their Magic Quadrant on decision intelligence platforms this December. They've identified the feature set, which is required to be a DIP. For example, you have to have decision simulation, you have to have decision modeling and auditing. All decisions made by AI have to be explainable, so it has to be glass box, not black box. Yeah, so there are a growing number of DIPs for several different use cases. We chose supply chain because, again, going back to where we started in Japan, we felt that the manufacturing and logistics process was slowed down by old, kind of outdated very analog decision-making processes. Almost all major decisions take weeks or months and are modeled out in spreadsheets. So we thought we could really help the Japanese economy starting there. But then as we interviewed people all over the world, ran our customer discovery, we found that it's a common problem for everybody,
Mhm.
even in the most advanced, digitally advanced nations. Supply chain is one of those areas where people are still doing all their processes using spreadsheets, and so there's a huge need for the product globally.
Yeah.
And we were very happy to find that because it was our intention to create the example of a Japanese startup that could go global from day one. As you mentioned, I've mentored a lot of startups over the years. This is my fourth business in Japan, and I would say third startup, using the definition of
Mhm.
venture backed for high growth. Uh, and I thought that combined with my co-founder's experience, this was the one that we could really build out as the example of a startup that could go global.
Very, very, very interesting, man. And I wanted to get into that as well because you said that, this is your fourth startup and like third one that's venture backed, right? For example, like I wanted to say that it's very hard to find like mentors, for example, that, are currently doing what you're giving advice like to founders for. Like,
Right? Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like sometimes mentors they've made it, they've exited, they're living a
Mhm.
comfortable life and just doing it for a hobby. You're currently actively building a startup. This is your third or fourth startup at this moment. Why still mentor? Why is it so important for you to mentor young founders, especially in Japan?
Anytime you try to teach something, through the process of teaching it, you really learn it.
Hmm.
If you've ever tried to explain a concept to someone, you realize that this quote is often attributed to Einstein, but if you can't explain it simply, you don't truly understand it. And so to really understand how startups work, how go-to-market strategy works, how to structure your funding, your various series and so on, the only way to really understand it is to kind of put yourself on the spot to to try and teach it as best you can, and then to learn through that process. So that was my original hypothesis for joining as a mentor at like the Founder Institute. But then what I found was, as a mentor, every time you're in something like a pitch deck review, coaching session, you learn so much from the other coaches
Hmm.
that it rapidly accelerates your own understanding. And of course, you learn a lot from the startups, and it's extremely beneficial to get this insight into how other people think about how they're going to pitch and explain their startups. Um, After you've tried to build 100 of your own pitch decks and then gone through 1,000 iterations of those, and then done that process for 100 other people, you start to really build a playbook of how you can explain concepts succinctly, and why is it that certain concepts resonate with some people and not with others. um, and very directly to that point, you start to learn that the way you explain things, or the way you think about things, and often when things are very, very clear, very obvious to you, they're still confusing to other people. So learning how to bridge that gap is critical experience.
Think you hit the nail on the head. When you teach something, you learn it twice because when you're teaching it, you have to
Yeah.
learn how to give that information concisely as possible. As a teacher, I
Right.
really resonate with that myself. It's
Yeah.
super important, man. So when you've obviously met several hundred, startup founders throughout your years, and you've gone through several business ideas. What is the one thing that founders just keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again that you constantly have
Mm.
like these same discussions with them?
I think it's the same mistake I made in my previous startups, which was not finding a big enough problem to solve. You're going to do exactly the same amount of work to solve a major interplanetary problem as you are to build like an app that auto feeds your cat or something like that. Like, I mean, not directly. That's obviously a bit of a tongue in cheek, a bit of a joke, but most of the work to get a startup up and off the ground and funded and build a team and everything is the same, whether you're solving a big problem or a small problem. And it's so much personal sacrifice that you really should choose something that's uh, so like driving, so intrinsically motivating that not only will you never give up to solve the problem, you can build a team around that and investors around that and your customers around that because everybody will be like so happy to have that problem solved.
Yeah, and also I think validating that problem is super important as well. Like a lot of people, they don't know what problem to solve, but then once they think of an
Mm.
idea, they usually think solution first and not
Hmm.
problem first. And that's a big mistake. And then they go about building something that nobody actually wants.
Yeah, I think that might be like the second most important lesson is everybody falls in love with their solution to the problem, probably a little bit too soon. So you really do have to do your due diligence of customer discovery and just force yourself to go out there and interview 100 people minimum and really learn from what they're saying. Like, don't, don't have this bias of, okay, somebody said that they have this problem and they want it solved X, and you immediately, the tendency is to immediately say, okay, that they just said they want it solved my way, but maybe not, right? Maybe you're mishearing exactly what they're saying, or you're just biased to believe that your solution is correct. So you have to be, open to the idea that your solution might not be the right way to do it, and you have to keep pivoting until you get that right. I guess the third big mistake that people make would be, you okay, so you think that you found a big problem, and you think that people are telling you how to solve that problem. So you start building something, maybe you get it into the hands of your users and you start testing pretty quickly. The next trap that most people fall into, especially in Japan, is over customizing for your initial users. And quite often you get into building a consulting practice instead of a productized, scalable solution. And it's a good tactic to bootstrap with initially. If people will pay you for a customized project, that's great, but you always have to remember that anything you build for them has to be useful for the next 100 users. So don't get caught into that consulting trap where you're just building a customized solution for like one person that nobody else will really need. And you have to learn how to say no, which is really hard in Japanese culture, to say no, even if it's a paying customer, or say, we can't build that out into the product, so we're going to have to charge extra for it, or we'll build it in such a way that it'll be scalable in future, or something like that. But keeping that, scalability in mind is key.
When founders get customers and they get that first dollar and they're like, oh my God, I want to keep this customer, they don't want to lose them. So, they
Yeah,
customize whatever their solution is at the beginning. And then that's what, like you said, is a big trap for sure. Absolutely.
yeah. It's really common to fall into, especially in Japan.
Mhm. So in terms of your current stage at Kimaro, what stage are you guys at now? Have you raised money and what stage are you hoping, or if you haven't, when do you think that will be and stuff like that? Yeah.
Yeah, so we got a huge boost from the Japan Alchemist Accelerator program. We were one of 9 companies that was in class one.
Mm.
So this is a JETRO government-backed, accelerator program that was, brought to Japan. The mission is to create a bridge between like Tokyo and Silicon Valley to, do knowledge sharing. They invested in us an equity investment. Um, and that got us, our initial funding, and then we used essentially the same terms, which was a convertible note.
Hmm.
So not a priced round yet, but we extended that into basically like a friends and family angel round, which we considered a pre-seed round. That's currently at 280,000 US dollars. So it's
Excellent.
given us, enough traction to build the product and to be, constantly on the road, going and visiting customers, going to exhibitions. You've seen my LinkedIn feed. I'm on stage every other day, it feels like.
Yes.
Uh, so that's getting us, our initial, let's say, beachhead into the market.
Mm.
Uh, but we're looking to raise a seed round, and that would be coinciding with the Alchemist US program. And the global demo day for the Alchemist US program, which we're currently in, is September 30th.
Ooh, exciting.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so that's we're targeting a 5 mil round, and we do have an LOI from a lead investor on that, so we're optimistic that that will assist with getting more traction or getting more interest from other follow-on investors. But I should say the key thing is traction. And so over the next few months, we have to keep signing people up for pilots and keep solving problems for them, and then creating clear uplift metrics that we can share, and then we should be able to get there.
What is the biggest challenge that you guys are going through at the moment? If anything you can share in terms of that.
Yeah, so the biggest challenge this time, I would say, is that what we've built is a pretty complex B2B platform that needs to integrate with almost all existing systems for let's say a vertically integrated manufacturer retailer. They're going to be doing a lot of product management in large SKU files and like Excel, probably using an enterprise resource planning system, ERP system, a CRM like maybe Salesforce or HubSpot, point of sale system for historical sales records. We need to integrate all of that data as well as external data like weather, traffic, shipping information in order to build out these prescriptive models and recommend actions, right? That's complex. It takes a few months to implement and train the models and everything. So it is a very complex sale. And what I'm finding is that my usual B2B enterprise sales playbook, which I've utilized for other tech, I've brought to the Japanese market or sold across Asia Pacific in the past, my typical sort of scalable sales engine is not working. Like
Mhm.
it's very difficult to do cold outreach until you have success stories, testimonials, and case studies from successful pilots. So the mistake I think I made early on was trying to, you know, go right into running my usual sales playbook for an established enterprise platform when the perception in the market is still skeptical because we don't have the necessary completed pilots with those uplift metrics and the resulting testimonials, or we hadn't until recently. So I realized that I needed to create sort of a bridging function where we leverage personal networks, recommendations, and just go talk to people in person and find out what their real needs are.
Mhm.
uh, and the reason is because partly coinciding with the rise of agentic sales outreach agents, people are now flooded with like LinkedIn requests, email requests. People just don't really have time to like explore a new tool, let's say via a cold outreach email or a LinkedIn message. But they'll listen to a trusted friend who wants to help a startup out to do an initial pilot project. So that bridging function is critical. And maybe I'll just recap that because the previous explanation was a little bit long-winded. So here's my takeaway. If you're a startup and you're selling a product that's not self-serve, you have to leverage your personal network, get introductions to trusted personal contacts in order to do your first few pilot projects or POCs before you can really start running a sales outreach program.
Absolutely. And B2B sales is really, really challenging to get into for startups sometimes, especially if you haven't had that proven background or those testimonials, like you're saying, to show proof that, hey, this works. And like you're saying, Kimaro, it sounds like it's very hard to implement at first, but once it's in there, it provides a ton of value. But getting those initial customers on has been very slow because there's so much work that has to be done, right? To integrate.
Yeah, yeah. Although I'll take exception to the phrasing of hard to implement, and just say that it is a little bit time intensive to implement.
I would.
Our agents, our underlying vertical agents, actually do most of the implementation work, which is one of our big competitive advantages.
Hmm.
So it's actually a really easy platform to get started with from the human user's perspective. But we do the data implementation and data training and so on our side, and so that takes a little bit of time.
See. Very interesting stuff, man. And it's great because you're literally like practicing what you preach, like when it comes to startup founders, like and how to, go about this type of process. It's very, very fascinating. And I'm really like when I heard you were building a startup, I was like, what? A mentor is actually doing a startup now? This is so cool, man. Like, yeah, and it's been great to see your story because Kimaru is what, like a little over a year old, is that correct?
Yes, so we incorporated the Japanese entity in December of 2024, and the US entity in November. So we're not even a year old for the US entity, which is actually where most of our dev and dev work and IP is. So the three co-founders, we had the idea working at a previous company. And so we
Oh.
did a little bit of foundational work there before we spun it out of that company and got permission essentially to spin it out. But yeah, really working full time on it. It's been yeah, just about a year.
Really, really exciting, man. Yeah, like I said, I come here like just into Japan a little over a year ago, and yeah, I met you and then saw you were building a company. So it's like around the same timing that you guys started. So that's really, really cool. Really exciting stuff. How has it been for you as the CEO, like, going out and doing all these events? You had said that you were on stage, a couple of weeks ago, right? How is that process
Yeah,
for you? Yeah.
yeah. So I started as the CRO or Chief Revenue Officer, and then took over CEO just a couple of months ago. So my co-founder Sinjin, he assisted with the initial launch of the company. He's got a lot of you know company launch experience, and that was super helpful. My expertise is really more around the sales function, uh, but we realized that essentially it's a sales function whether we're pitching to investors or whether we're selling the product. And so it helped to basically have a front man who can be out there selling all of the time. And we also learned that it's an interesting time where our target users are in dire need of our product, especially with things like tariff chaos causing the need to reshore, redo supply chains, climate change, constantly reworking shipping routes, and the need to well change things due to global conflicts like the recent Iranian conflict, Ukraine conflict, and so on. So it's just a time of constant chaos. And people are in dire need of the product, but they're also so busy that they don't really have time to like read an article or an ad or something about it. What they do have time to do is like listen to podcasts and videos. So I realized, or we realized, that the most effective medium for getting our message out there is basically talking about it, doing shows like this, and that's something that I quite enjoy. As you can see, I like to talk, especially about something I'm passionate about.
Mhm.
So that's been good. What I think I've learned through that experience is, for most tech startups, the CEO's role is basically to be the evangelist, to go out there and really tell people what it is that they're working on, and try to get people passionate about the problem that they're trying to solve. And in our case, yeah, like I was saying earlier, to pick a big problem, there's $1.6 trillion lost every year in the global supply chain because of slow decision making. That's Accenture's metric, not mine. But it's amazing. 1.6 trillion in loss is what we're trying to solve. So that's a problem worth caring about.
That is definitely a problem with carrying. That's a lot of money, man. Yeah, and I love the fact that you have that numbers, for example, ready to go. Like a lot of CEOs, especially startup founders, they don't really understand what it means to be a CEO because they don't really understand business, right? Sometimes, right? They just have this idea and they want to build something, especially first-time founders, right?
Mm.
So, what are the skills that you think somebody who's jumping into that CEO role as a startup founder really need to get started?
Well, let me answer in terms of what our investors told us were the reasons they invested for, because I think that's a direct correlation.
Hmm.
The investors that have come on board so far all said that they invested because we did so much research and shared so much information that they felt we were subject matter experts, and we were absolutely committed, to solving this problem. So, like you mentioned a moment ago, to really understand your market and be able to quote metrics for it, uh, that builds a lot of confidence. So, I think as the CEO, you probably want to spend your time building the product, managing the team, all of these different things. But I think at the start, what you really need to do is go out there and talk to customers, read, trade journals, listen to podcasts, educate yourself, read as many books as possible so you really understand the market and the problem, and then get quite good at understanding those metrics so you can tell the story.
Mhm.
For example, AI and supply chain. McKinsey has seen that across the board, companies that apply AI solutions like ours to supply chain see a 15% overall cost reduction in inventory, 35% less overall inventory that they have to manage. So, 35% more cash that they can reinvest into the business, and a 65% improvement in their ability to serve their customer needs. So, faster response time across the supply chain. Yeah, so knowing your metrics and being able to talk about them fluently, it really helps build confidence with investors, and of course customers as well. Like it just helps to really know your market.
Yeah, absolutely. And potential talent that you bring on as well. They'll want to buy in to your mission if you can talk about it concisely and with confidence as well. Well, yeah, I mean,
Mm.
Evan, it sounds like, you guys are well on your way to, raising your next round and like, really bringing Kimaru to the world. Japan needs more globally, focused startups. And there's been a lot of challenges in doing that. From your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges for, Japanese startups going global?
Well, I think the number one thing is that a lot of mentors and investors will still advise Japanese startups to build a base in the domestic market first and then use that as a launch platform. That's been the conventional wisdom for 20 or 30 years now. The problem is we don't actually see any success stories using that model.
Mhm.
And so I think it's a better strategy, or at least let's test the hypothesis of the strategy of trying to go global from day one.
Mhm.
And that means, tooling your company for global competency. That includes, language, hiring people or having co-founders who have some international experience or maybe are from other countries, leveraging accelerator programs like Alchemist, Antler, 500s, plug and play, Techstars. Sorry to the others that I can't remember right now, but any founder institute, of course, any program like that that gets you that, let's say, global mindset, global competence, global fluency, and solve a problem on a global level, if not an interplanetary level. We're not too far away from being able to go to Mars, and so let's think on massive scales and solve real problems. And then you'll you'll see the biggest return for all the effort that you put in if you think big from the start.
If you don't think big, then you'll be stuck in, the little island that is Japan, for the rest of your life. And that's the unfortunate path a lot of founders take. Because it's such a good
Well,
economy. Yeah, it is. It's pretty good. It's
it
attractive.
it is it is a lovely place to live, and I'm always a strong advocate of the quality of life, the safety, security, just the pleasantness that it is living in Japan, and that's fine. And a lot of people want to maybe do a lifestyle business that allows them to live comfortably and have some autonomy and control over their work life balance. And that's great, but that's not a startup. That's not the literal definition of a startup. That's a lifestyle business that you can probably bootstrap or maybe take a bank loan to get going. A startup is venture backed to take on a big problem, and success means a big win for your investors, which is why they help you out.
Mhm.
So it's important to make that differentiation and to know, as an entrepreneur, are you a startup founder or are you a lifestyle business entrepreneur? Those are two different things.
So, before we wrap up, I want to kind of ask you, what do you see Kimaru's like where do you hope Kimaru and your startup journey is in the next, couple of years, 5 years, especially with AI and all these different competitors coming, in all from different directions, right?
Yeah.
Where do you hope to be within the next 5 years?
We have a roadmap that takes us to 2030 that puts us as the global leader in decision intelligence platforms for supply chain. At which point we will achieve a network effect. Everybody using the platform benefits from all the other users on the platform. At that point, we're building out a large market model, or LMM, where we're essentially making predictions, load balancing across the entire global supply chain. And that path brings us to 100 million in annual recurring revenue, which is the usual, demarcation line for a unicorn.
Hmm.
Um, that's essentially the 5 year plan. And the fact that we've modeled out in quite intricate detail the path to get there is one reason why we've been able to get the investment that we have so far. Uh, we have over 100 pages of reports and quite intricate detail in our data room, all of which is linked from the pitch deck. So a lot of research went into that, and we believe we have a good shot to do that.
Uh, just a side question. Do you ever use like Kimaru to make some decisions internally for, maybe startup direction or things to go? Anything like that?
Oh, certainly. The underlying decision intelligence methodology can be done on the back of a napkin. It's simply, determine what your desired outcome is, map out everything that you can do, all the actions you can take to control it, work out which factors are within your control, which are external factors, and then connect the data to model that out. And so, simply as a thought exercise, you can do that for anything. And so, yeah, we try to apply that decision intelligence methodology internally as well.
Because I know like a lot of, startup founders really make decisions by emotion sometimes. So like, maybe it could be good to remove some of that emotion, see things objectively and like make better decisions. But you guys are super experienced in that regard. So
Well, it's good to make a delineation between emotion and intuition. If you've ever read Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky's research in Thinking Fast and Slow, they talk about system one and system two thinking. And system one is your kind of bottom up limbic system, the sort of things that we know that we don't know, the intuition judgment that allows us to make immediate fight or flight type of decisions. And system two is the more top down rational thinking, right? So intuition is a massive database of everything we've accumulated over time or learned, from other people. And we shouldn't discount that. It's often extremely useful, but you have to apply that top down, rational process to the, apply system two to the system one thinking in order to have good decision.
everything in balance, exactly. Yeah, that's actually a great
Everything in
book.
balance. Yeah.
I love that book. It's such a good one. It was really eye-opening for me when I read it as well. But cool, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
we spoke about a lot about Kimaru, your mentoring, obviously
Hmm.
decision intelligence. Is there anything that we didn't speak about that you think we should have spoke about?
Well, I'm a real passionate advocate for the Japanese startup ecosystem. And so I think it's good to think about like what is the number one thing that's missing in the Japanese ecosystem right now?
Mm,
Why is it that it hasn't, kind of really taken off and created like a flywheel of growth, like Silicon Valley or other startup ecosystems have? Silicon Valley is quite a big thing to aspire to. So let's use the example of maybe more like Paris or an easily attainable model. I think that's a really good question to think about. So, would you like to leave that as a question to the next speaker, or would you like to talk about
No,
that
I'd
more
love to
now?
hear your insights on it. Yeah, right now. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
Okay, so I think there's one thing missing, and that is permission. So the reason I say permission is because Japan is a such a group-based society. Nobody wants to do something if they feel that it's not permissible or like socially acceptable. So JETRO backing these accelerator programs is basically top-down government permission. And if that extends throughout society so that parents are giving permission to their parent or to their children to get into startups, if it's like culturally permissible, if banks will accept applications from startup founders, if the entire culture starts to give permission for people to do startups again, like they did in the 50s and 60s, then there could be another economic miracle like there was in the 60s through 80s.
Mhm.
And all that's lacking is social and cultural permission. But that doesn't exist right now because what is the single most important thing to Japanese society right now? Well, they tell us in every advertisement we see on TV, it's anshin and zen,
Mhm.
safety and security.
Yeah.
The entire ethos of the culture is built around safety and security. And there's not very much to do with being like number one or competitive or extremely successful that's connected to safety and security.
Right.
So permission to get out there and essentially take risks, be competitive, engage in the whole startup journey. That's what's missing.
Absolutely. And I think hand in hand with that is overcoming the fear of failure. Because in order to, take those risks, in order to, have permission to do that, you also have to give yourself permission to make mistakes. And I feel a lot of
Yeah,
people don't do that. They feel very fearful of making even the slightest mistake because there's a lot of shame that comes with it. And one of the main avoidance
mm,
of all humans is to avoid shame, but more so here in Japan, I think.
yeah, certainly. But it wasn't like that in the 50s and 60s when most of the famous Japanese brands, the success stories, the Sonys and Panasonics and Toyota, uh, they were not built on risk aversion. They were built on wanting to be number one and being competitive. And that's got very little to do with Anshin Anzen, safety and security. So
Right.
yeah, just permission to compete again is that's what's lacking in society
Absolutely. Japan, you have permission. Please, please, please,
right.
we'll give you permission. Build some great, beautiful startups, we all need it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we'll do our best to help.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we have a closing tradition where the last guest left a question for you, and you'll leave a question for
Mhm.
the next guest. So you ready for your question?
Sure.
Okay. So what was the learning in your life or your learning throughout your business or your career with the biggest impact on how you run your business today?
Ask for advice.
Ask for advice.
So in the first few startups, I thought that it was the founders' responsibility to take on everything themselves. And I think I kind of had the example of my dad being captain of his boat and having full responsibility. And so I thought that like the CEO's position was like captain of the boat, and you had to take on all the responsibility, all the decisions, all the worry, and never like let the crew feel that, be upset about that. Uh, but that was a mistake, and I realized that you need to you need to ask for help. You need to be willing to ask for advice. You have to have good advisors. You can't do it all yourself, and you're not going to be successful if you try to do it all yourself. So ask for advice.
And it's right on cue for you being a mentor as well. You probably get asked for advice all the time, and I love how, you chose that as an answer because you're
Yeah.
literally, living that and helping others, learn on their journey and stuff like that. So that's incredible, man. Really, really good stuff. Now, what is the question you have for our next guest? Yes.
I want to go on that same theme of what can we do to make the Japanese startup ecosystem successful?
Mm.
What's the number one thing that's missing?
Okay, so what's the number one thing that's missing in the Japanese startup ecosystem? Love it, man. I think
Yeah,
there's many things, but yeah, yeah, it'd be good to hear from someone
yeah,
else's perspective for sure. Awesome. Well, Evan, it has been an incredible conversation today. We finally got to chat, that a real,
yeah,
enough chat. And I think that we really got a lot of insights from you with regards to decision intelligence, obviously the Japanese startup ecosystem mentoring and the importance of it. And yeah, it was a really insightful conversation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again in another event, man.
yeah, totally. And there, I hope that you can tell me about your business because I got the chance to chat, but you didn't.
Yeah, no
You just had
worries.
to ask all the questions. So
No
yeah,
worries.
looking forward to catching up next time. And thanks again for the opportunity to come on and talk about what we're doing here.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Product Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify. or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps this channel grow. And if you are a product manager or a startup founder who wants to share your story or some of the struggles that you've gone through in your career, then definitely reach out to us. We'd love to have you on. And until next time, happy building, everyone.